Welcome to this edition of the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Monday, October 4th, 2021. If you'd like additional weather information upon some things I speak about this evening, you can go to weather.gov/Alaska. And as usual, I have quite a few things to talk about. This week is Alaska Winter Weather Preparedness Week. No kidding, we've already been preparing the last few weeks. We've had winter come early in areas of the state with some couple of episodes of heavier snow. Our next significant weather maker is the remnants of a typhoon, creating a Bering Sea low and an occluded front that's going to be working its way along the west and southwest coast and pushing inland. That moisture is going to translate over to snow, heavier snow. It means also some elevated surf along the southern and western coastlines. And then as we go in toward the interior, we expect some heavier snow to be falling on the south side of the Brooks Range down through the middle Yukon Valley, as well as just south of the Alaska Range up through the Talkeetna Mountains. And here's where we have the advisories. A winter storm warning is in effect for noon Tuesday through Thursday night. And that is the areas in red, includes Ambler, Bettles, Galena, Tanana on up toward Arctic Village, where 4 to as much as 12 inches of snow could fall. Heaviest accumulations are expected, though, in elevations above 2,000 feet. And then off to the south, there is a winter weather advisory for the northern Susitna Valley, including Talkeetna northward, Cantwell on up toward the entrance of Denali Park, where several inches of snow will fall between 7 p.m. Tomorrow evening, Tuesday evening, through 1 a.m. Thursday morning. And reason for this is we have a front that's going to work its way inland. It does have some warmer air and moisture with it. We can see the most significant precipitation expected on Tuesday will be from the southwest interior, from near and just southwest of McGrath and Nome, back down toward Bethel and Dillingham. And as that moisture spreads inland and encounters the colder air, it's going to transition to some moderate to heavier snow. And we can see by Wednesday that that moisture works its way on up to the vicinity of Bettles, just west of Fairbanks, and in those areas, especially along and south of the Brooks Range to the Yukon River, several inches of snow will be falling there from late Tuesday through early Thursday into Thursday night. And then also notice the increased moisture coming in up along the northern Gulf Coast in the vicinity of Prince William Sound, Whittier. And as that moisture lifts northward up on the south side of the Alaska Range until the Talkeetna Mountains, there will be several inches of snow potentially as we go into Tuesday night, and especially during the day on Wednesday. Well, it is not technically winter yet, but what causes the seasons? It's the tilt of the Earth's axis and where we are relative to our orbit around the sun. And in the wintertime, the northern hemisphere tilts away from the sun. And as a result, we have an overall cooling that happens through the hemisphere, and the Earth's axis at this time is tilted to 23.5 degrees. So as a result, that time of year, as we get toward the December solstice, which can happen anytime between the 19th and 23rd, and as a result, we experience our coldest temperatures there later in December, especially through January, early February. The current outlook for Alaska for the winter, and this is meteorological winter, November, December, and January, shows a potential for below normal temperatures southeast interior back through the Panhandle, with the potential for a little above normal temperatures along the northwest coast, northwest Seward Peninsula, with above normal precipitation and expected along the west coast from the northwest through the Seward down through the Alaska Peninsula. And another thing we have going on that's forecasted is a La Nina pattern. So in the El Nino Southern Oscillation, which happens to measure temperatures in the equatorial Pacific, the water temperatures there are expected to average below normal west of South America to just east of Australia. And what happens there is it causes this general prevailing polar jet stream pattern, which would keep at least the southeast part of Alaska cooler than usual. That colder air can spill on into the northern U.S., and it tends to bring wetter or above normal precipitation to parts of the lower 48 in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Northern California, as well as the lower Great Lakes, Ohio, and Tennessee valleys. So that is the current outlook here as we head into the early winter season. So on the satellite imagery, the southeast has enjoyed some clearing after a stormy early weekend. A ridge of high pressure extends from the Arctic Ocean down along the Alcan border out into the central Gulf and into the North Pacific. And as a result, it's brought sunshine also to areas around Cook Inlet, including Anchorage. And so enjoy that, because there's the cloud cover coming in from the west. You can see the curl in the clouds there out off the Russian coast. And ahead of it, we have an occluded front that'll be pushing into the west coast as we head through the day tomorrow. And as that moisture arrives and encounters the colder air that's in the interior, it's going to change over to snow. So here's the weather map this afternoon. We have a nice ridge of high pressure extending from the North Pacific up through the Gulf along the Alcan border. And areas of the Panhandle enjoying some sunshine. With the clearer skies, you could see some denser fog redevelop tonight into early Tuesday morning. Meanwhile, to the west, the precipitation will be spreading inland, and as it encounters the colder air, it'll fall in the form of snow. Along coastal areas, though, where closer to the milder water temperatures of the Bering and the North Pacific, you will see precipitation there fall in the form of rain. And so as we go through tonight, early morning, we'll see that snow spreading farther inland up along the Yukon River, as well as the Brooks Range, especially the south side of the Brooks Range, as well as into Cook Inlet and the western arm of the Alaska Range. And then on Tuesday, look for mainly rain along the western and southwestern coastal areas, but the interior will see bouts of some moderate to even heavier snow, especially up there along and north of the Yukon River through the Brooks Range, and then also developing through along and south of the Alaska Range and through the Talkeetna Mountains. And then by Wednesday, the system has its hold, and we'll see widespread precipitation from especially central areas of the state back through the west, with the western areas experiencing mainly rain as temperatures will be warm enough for that to occur. And looking at low temperatures for Tuesday morning, where there is some clearing, temperatures could get down around freezing and areas of dense fog could form in the Panhandle. Back toward the southeastern interior, Glen Allen could see lows down into the upper teens, as skies will still be increasing cloud cover, but initially clear to start the night, and where the clouds thicken up back toward the west, readings will generally be around 40 as you extend out over the Alaska Peninsula. Tuesday afternoon, generally 40s, a few lower 50s, maybe there over toward Sitka, Craig. And then back through the Kenai, we're looking at temperatures 40s to near 50, 53 at Kodiak, but cooler to the north up to Talkeetna, only near 40. And then Wednesday morning lows will generally still be back down below freezing there in the southeast in the inner canals. And then back toward the west, we are looking for that precipitation overspreading much of the area, with lows in some areas below freezing where the snow falls, and then where the milder air creeps up, lows mid-30s to near 40 degrees. As we go through Wednesday afternoon, look for high temperatures to generally be in the 40s to near 50 across the Panhandle, and generally in the mid-40s to near 50 along portions there of the south central coast. As we go up along the Arctic coast, lows will get down in the teens as well as in through the Brooks Range, 20s elsewhere, but warmer above freezing there, western Seward Peninsula down toward Nome and Eamonic. And then as we go into Tuesday, temperatures will only be below freezing in the Brooks Range and along the Arctic coast. Creeping upwards, though, lower mid-40s back through the Seward Peninsula and the southwest as that occluded front works its way inland. But as I mentioned, the interior will see snow. Some of it could be moderately heavy at times, especially up along and south of the Brooks Range to the Yukon River. And then on Wednesday afternoon, look for temperatures. It could get back up around near freezing along the Arctic coast, still a bit below freezing along the spine of the Brooks Range, and creeping upwards to near 40. So a little milder air is going to try to work its way up from the lower Yukon Valley. And then across the southwest Tuesday morning, we are looking for lows generally below freezing in the interior, 40s along the coast as well as in the Aleutians. And then Tuesday afternoon, As that milder air pushes inland, temperatures low and mid 40s, lower 50s as we get out along the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians. And then finally, as we get on up through the Wednesday morning hours, temperatures, most areas will rise back up above freezing, mid 30s to lower 40s, with high temperatures Wednesday afternoon. We should be able to get readings back up into the 40s across much of the area, with lower 50s likely along the Alaska Peninsula into the central and eastern Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
In your aviation weather, if you are planning a flight Tuesday into Wednesday, the main weather feature will be low pressure over the northwest Bering that'll be continuing to work its way east-northeastward, and an occluded front that'll be pushing onshore through the Seward Peninsula and the southwest portions of the state and the central Alaska Peninsula. This front will bring widespread IFR conditions, rain and snow, and as the precipitation works its way inland, it will produce accumulating snow, several inches possible, especially on the south side of the Brooks Range down to the Yukon River, where winter storm warnings are in effect from noon Tuesday through midnight Thursday night, and also along the west arm of the Alaska Range and up through the northern Susitna Valley, or I should say the Susitna Valley north of Talkeetna. So keep that in mind if you have any flight plans coming up. We see widespread IFR conditions for Tuesday morning along the southwest Alaska Peninsula there up through the northern Bering and the Bering Strait. And then on Tuesday afternoon, look for IFR conditions to continue to spread inland across the southwest and western interior of the state. Also widespread IFR conditions across the central and eastern Aleutians. And we see a widespread area of IFR conditions Wednesday morning. As we look at the western third and half of the state, we'll also notice the eastward extent along the south side of the Brooks Range as that area of accumulating snow spreads further eastward. And then on Wednesday, look for IFR conditions also up into the northern Gulf, including Prince William Sound, the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, back up through areas that continue to see IFR conditions there in the west. So past conditions on Tuesday, AKwx will see MVFR conditions, as will Adigan Pass, but conditions there will be deteriorating as we head through Tuesday night and Wednesday to IFR. And look for Lake Clark to generally be IFR on Tuesday. Merrill will go from MVFR to IFR as the day unfolds. And then as we look at Rainy Pass, look for MVFR becoming IFR, especially later in the day and Tuesday night, whereas the west entrance should hold on to MVFR conditions during the daytime on Tuesday, with IFR conditions along the east side there, especially east of the east entrance. Windy Pass, MVFR, and then Isabel as well as Mentasta should have MVFR conditions throughout the day Tuesday. Further south and west, Tanita will also see MVFR conditions, as will Portage passes, and these areas will, especially Portage and Tanita passes, will likely become IFR as more moisture begins to spread in from the southwest. Chilkoot and White, though, will enjoy VFR conditions, though there is the potential any clearing that occurs Monday night into Tuesday morning across the Panhandle, given the recent heavier rainfall, could lead to some areas of fog forming. Freezing levels Tuesday morning will be down near the surface along the northern Gulf Coast and much of the interior. Notice along that particular occluded front, freezing levels do come up across the southwest to as high as 8,000 and 10,000 feet as you go out along the western half of the Alaska Peninsula. And then the greatest potential for icing on Tuesday will be associated with that occluded front working its way inland between 6,000 and 16,000 feet across the southwest, and areas between 10,000 and 18,000 feet southeast of Kodiak Island out over the North Pacific Western Gulf interface. Upper level jet stream winds 30,000 feet. There is a strong core of winds, but 150 knots there in the central Aleutians out of the southwest. And this is helping to drive that particular low pressure up there over the northwest Bering. As we drop down to 9,000 feet, we have winds on the order of 50 to 65 to near 70 knots extending along the Alaska Peninsula back into the central Aleutians. And some of that wind coming onshore in through the southwest. At 3,000 feet, we have 35 to 40 knot winds, southwest parts of the state. and upwards of 40 to 50 knots down along the Alaska Peninsula into the eastern half of the Aleutians. And this will translate to turbulence surface to 4,000 feet up there in the western Brooks Range, just east there of the Seward Peninsula. Surface to 4,000 foot turbulence there across the interior southwest. And then in the area of surface to 3,000 foot turbulence from the tip of the Alaska Peninsula back through the eastern, central, and the nearer western Aleutian chain. That does it for your flight weather. If you are planning a flight coming up here as we head into midweek, certainly check the latest forecast and conditions, and have a safe flight.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We really appreciate it, as always.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks. And, you know, we're going to ask you some more satellite questions here, but, you know,
Okay.
since you're a regular guest, we're going to give you a riddle this time, kind of a trick start to the show.
Okay.
How do you see a polar bear in a snowstorm?
Sounds like a challenging question because
Okay.
the polar bear is white and the snowstorm's white.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, in the world of satellite meteorology, you couldn't, because the spatial resolution of this instrument that we're going to talk about today has 375 meters resolution, and even the most well-fed polar bear will not be 375 meters across.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to run into such a
No, that'd be a
creature,
bad day.
would you? In the satellite meteorology world, the equivalent would be, how do you tell the difference between clouds and then an area that has no clouds but's covered by snow,
Right.
a piece of ocean that has no clouds but has sea ice?
Ah.
All three of these are white. The
Right.
snow, the clouds, the sea ice, it's all white. So how, using satellite data, can you tell someone where the clouds are and where the clear areas are? This is important for aviators. Mariners want to know, in the ocean there, this white stuff, is that sea ice or is that just a cloud? How do we tell the difference? And it turns out, if you look, say, at a picture of Alaska from the springtime, March or April, and it's high noon, so we're getting a lot of sunshine. If you were riding on a satellite with your human eye, look down, everything's white.
Right.
And we've got a picture of Alaska from early April, and we're seeing some of the lower elevations in south central Alaska are melting out, getting some brown ground there, but otherwise there's a whole lot of white on the image. What areas are cloudy, but what areas are clear and covered by snow or ice? It turns out that if we leave the visible spectrum behind a little bit. See, a satellite has multiple channels in the electromagnetic spectrum that it can look at. Part of that's visible light, what we see as humans, but there's a lot going on at other wavelengths. If we add in something that's called near infrared, what we couldn't quite see, but we're getting into that infrared territory, there's a magical property that we can exploit.
Secrets to find.
Oh yeah. This is actually powerful and almost magical, that at a slightly longer wavelength, when the sun shines down on Alaska and then it bounces off back to the satellite, at that near infrared wavelength, it turns out that snow and ice will absorb that wavelength, but liquid water, like liquid droplets in a cloud, will reflect it back. And that's not the way it works in visible. Visible, it just bounces off of all those targets the same. But at near infrared, snow and ice absorbs it, and the liquid will reflect it back. Liquid cloud droplets will do that. And so an image where everything looks white suddenly becomes colorful. And the way this recipe works is that the clouds look pink, and the snow-covered ground and the ice-covered ocean look blue. Suddenly now, we're able to see the polar bear in the snowstorm. We're able to see where the clouds are and where the snow is and where the ice is. This is a powerful advantage. Consider the case zooming into the Bering Strait area. What if you were asked to brief a pilot who wanted to fly, say, from Kotzebue down to Savunga or Gamble, and had to fly VFR, visual flight rules, so they had to stay out of the clouds? Could you use a satellite image where everything is white to provide that pilot any guidance?
It'd be pretty tricky.
Very tricky. And that's why we have to go to this other recipe where the all-white polar bear in the snowstorm becomes more colorful. And now we can tell the pilot, aha, this is a cloud you want to stay out of, but over here, sure, it looks white in the visible spectrum, but what we're doing, we'll show you, oh, this is just snow-covered ground, but it's clear, so you can fly right through there, visual flight rules. Same thing for a mariner who might want to get down to St. Lawrence Island, say, but it has to avoid the sea ice. This product has applicability there as well.
Wonderful.
It's an amazing new technology, so many new channels. The satellite that makes this imagery actually has 22 different channels that it looks at.
22 secret decoder rings.
22 secret decoder rings.
Okay. You know, I liken this to an activity I had in the car when I was growing up. We go on long car rides, and we do all the work in these activity books to, you know, stay calm, cool, and collected for our parents who were trying to get us across the state. But to get the answer, the real answer, you had to apply that red sheet to see the answer or the secret path or whatever the message was in that activity book to get you onto the next page. And it's also like a photography filter, right? If you're taking a lot of pictures, you can apply different colors to see different parts of that image. I mean, that sounds a lot like what you're talking about.
Oh, you know it. The information is in there all along. We just have to combine the channels in a way to reveal what's in there. And by the way, you're dating yourself. So you didn't have an iPad in the back of the car?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, we have, lastly, for dessert, there's a great image of the same kind of recipe. We're looking at South Central Alaska the first week of January. In first week of January, the sun, even at noon, is really low on the horizon, barely up. And in this image, the fun thing is the shadow of Denali. We can see the shadow of Denali over a lower pink cloud deck.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And Denali at 20,000 feet casts a big shadow. So this is another, just for fun, kind of application here. This is called multispectral satellite imagery, and it's the future. And happily, the future is now.
Oh, that is fascinating. And 22 different secrets that can be revealed from just one satellite tool that's floating overhead. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again. We can't wait to have you back and telling us more secrets of satellite technology that are passing over us every single day, many times a day, over Alaska and helping us all the way in many different parts of our lives. So thanks so much for joining us again.
Well, happy to be here.
All right. And thank you for staying with us. We'll be back with a little more weather here in just a few minutes. And of course, we'll have more Alaska weather facts anytime online.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
All right, we're into the home stretch now, and with the sea ice edge, we are starting to see a little bit of ice forming along the Arctic coast, down along the north coast between Wainwright and Point Lay, as well as in little pockets there in Kotzebue Sound. As we'd expect with the colder weather we've had, that will continue. But there is a little push of milder air coming in from the south. South-southwest winds will bring in a little milder air, especially up into the Seward Peninsula as we head through the day on Tuesday and into Wednesday. So across the southeast, skies will be some clearing tonight in the early morning, could lead to some areas of fog in the early morning. And then otherwise winds, the inner canals will be out of the north-northwest, anywhere from 10 to as high as 20 knots there toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla. Otherwise, waves 2-4 feet at best, and along the Gulf Coast, the outer areas there, seeing winds 10 to maybe as high as 15-20 knots south of Sitka, with waves 5 to 8 feet, less or so as you get from Yakutat westward. And then for Wednesday, winds will be somewhat variable in the inner canals there at 10 to 15 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet. And generally winds trying to turn back more toward the south at about 10 to 15 knots there, Sitka to Gustavus, waves 4-5 feet, and turning more northeasterly and picking up to 30 knots there west of Yakutat. As we look at the south central areas, winds will be generally east-southeast component, and winds could be as high as 20 knots, the lower half of Cook Inlet, with waves maybe running 4 to 6 feet there. Otherwise, Whittier, as we get out to Prince William Sound, waves only 2 to 3 feet, as well as in the upper Cook Inlet. And then during the day on Wednesday, with that occluded front and weak low approaching there through the Kenai Peninsula, we are expecting winds to turn from southeast to southerly and pick up 20 to 25 knots. Ahead of it, though, 30-knot winds north central Gulf there, south of Cordova, with waves 5 to 8 feet. But Cook Inlet and Kodiak, off of Kodiak Island, winds will be south 20 to 25 knots, waves 5 to 6 feet. On Tuesday, as we look through the North Pacific Western Gulf interface there, Kodiak Island winds south 15 to 20 knots, waves 4 feet. Stronger winds 25 to 30 knots will be on the Bering side, Bristol Bay, out toward Cold Bay, with waves building from 5-6 feet upwards to 10 feet north of Cold Bay. And then Wednesday, in the wake of the passage of that occluded front, we'll see winds picking up from the southwest and west, 25 to 30 knots, waves 6 to 8 feet on the Gulf and North Pacific side, and 10 to 14 feet Bristol Bay on up toward the Bering side. And then for Tuesday, across the Aleutians, winds will generally be out of the southwest, 25 to 30 knots, waves 8 to 12 feet. The eastern Aleutians on the North Pacific side, building 12 to 14 feet. The Bering side, especially as we get toward Adak and west to Kiska and Shemya. And then for Wednesday, winds will come down a bit, still southwesterly, 20 to 25 knots, waves anywhere from 7 to 10 feet on the North Pacific side, and generally 10 to maybe 13 feet through the eastern Aleutians there on the Bering side. And looking at the west coast, that front will be pushing inland into the southwest coast, and as a result, winds will turn from south to southwest, 25 to 30 knots, waves building as high as 16 to 19 feet, St. Paul, St. George, up toward St. Matthew. And then as we go into Wednesday, winds overall across the region, especially south of Hooper Bay, will generally be west-southwest to 30 knots with waves of 12 to 15 feet. Still, though, could be a south-southeast component to the wind in Norton Sound with waves of 8 feet. And finally, along the Arctic coast on Tuesday, winds will generally be east at 20 knots, extending down to Point Lay, and picking up easterly at 30 knots, the lower Chukchi Sea toward the Bering Strait with waves of 12 feet. And then on Wednesday, winds will generally be out of the east still along the Arctic and northwest coast, 15 knots along the Arctic coast, 20 to 25 knots in through the lower Chukchi Sea with waves of 8 to 10 feet. Quick check here. Here's that low out over the western Bering, lifting northeastward with the occluded front working its way onshore as we go through the overnight early on Tuesday morning. And then during the day Tuesday, low continues out there in the Bering with the front transitioning more to a trough, bringing accumulating snows to the interior, especially up along the Yukon Valley, as well as the Alaska Range and the south side of the Brooks Range, where snow could be locally heavy. So that's all the time I have this evening, but certainly thank you for joining me, and I'll be back tomorrow night to talk more about Winter Preparedness Week.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.